It's recording. We're good to go. Great. All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Veteran Voices, Extending GI Bill Benefits. I'm Wanda Wright, and I'm the director for the Office for Veteran and Military Academic Engagement. And I'm so excited to be here today with these wonderful panelists. We have Troy Rundle, who is a VA Vet Success Counselor. We have Alan Wynn, who is a Navy veteran and has Chapter 31 benefits right now and is an ASU student. Go Sun Devils. And of course, our coordinator from OVMAE, Stacy Eastwood. So I'm going to begin with questions. And then what I'm going to ask the three panelists to do is kind of start a conversation. And if you have questions, put them in the question box, and I'll try to intersect those. And we'll also offer questions at the end if there's anyone out there who wants to ask some pertinent questions. But I'll start off with this. So I'll start off with you, Troy. What can Chapter 33 post 9/11 benefits be used for?
So with the post 9/11 benefits, it can be used for any degree program, at a university or school that has the VA approval. So that's kind of the biggest thing, is what degree programs are there. It can also be used for technical schools, trade schools, apprenticeships. So there's a number of different things that you can use those benefits and try to get the most out of those, with maybe pairing up once you complete your degree, if you've got time left, a certificate program or something else to kind of increase that, what everybody likes to call your employability. What's going to make you look good when you're out there applying for jobs.
Right. Awesome. And then what's the best method for extending Chapter 33 post 9/11 benefits?
So
I'm sure there's lots of ways.
There are a lot.
Yes.
No, and I think, Alan can chime in because he's been using his benefits a couple different ways. A lot of it depends on the school that you're at, and how they have their courses structured. What's going to get you up to full time, or potentially report less credits to the VA. I think the biggest way to kind of extend your benefits is being smart in your semester. Obviously, you want to be successful and take what allows you to be successful. So maybe that 12 credits is full time. But otherwise, trying to take 15 credits at least a semester in the fall and the spring, so you're getting more done while using the same amount of entitlement, is going to allow you to finish your degree a little bit quicker, and then maybe have some months remaining.
Yeah, for me, as a student, I've gone to some of Troy's seminars in the past, and I've kind of stuck to the 15 credits like he's mentioned. And I found that 12 to 15 is a good amount that I could handle, specifically if I'm dealing like within my core classes. If I'm dealing like strictly within my core classes for like IT, I'll typically do 12 credits a semester, and then I'll do 15 to throw on like a extra general class. But that's the way I've been able to maximize my benefits.
So, but if you take 15 though, you don't necessarily have to turn in 15 to the VA, right? Is that how you kind of?
So with ASU, no, you wouldn't have to. So if we're gonna talk ASU specific, which for the most part that's who's on here, there is a trick with ASU, what we like to call the entitlements that are stretching your entitlement. And the way this works is it's because of how ASU structures their tuition for our in-state students. So in-state on-campus students, tuition is capped at 7 credits. So if you're taking your 12 or 15, anything above 7 is essentially free. And what you can choose to do then when you're using your education benefits is take your 12, your 15 credits, so you're full-time in the eyes of the school. But then on your paperwork with the Pat Tillman Veterans Center on that enrollment activity form, you can choose to report only 9 credits to the VA. And so when you do that, the VA sees you as a part-time student. But because ASU structures the tuition where it's capped at 7 credits, then when you're using the post 9/11 GI Bill, the Pat Tillman Veteran Center reports your full in-state tuition and fees along with those 9 credits, your, $5,800, your $6,000, whatever it is for your program. And your tuition's fully covered, even with just 9 credits. And where this saves your entitlement is the VA sees you as a 75% rate of pursuit if you're in the C session. So then you're only using 75% of a day. So typically the semester, the fall and the spring uses about 4 months of benefits. So in that scenario, you're only using 3. You're getting 80% for the housing, so you do lose some money there. But that allows you to use less entitlement, save some of that time to get further into your degree and maybe save some months for your grad program.
So we have a question, Troy.
Yeah,
Does stretching your entitlement work for fully online students?
it can, but it's harder. And so stretching only works if you're in state for tuition purposes. If you're an out-of-state student and you're charged for every credit and you don't want to report less, because then obviously you're having to cover tuition out of pocket. Okay. As an online student, tuition is capped at a specific dollar amount, which I think is that 58, that 5,700, but that comes out to be about 9 or 10 credits. And so as an online student, if you're in state, you can report, 6 credits in A and then a 3 credit class in B. So that gets you 9 credits. You maybe have 1 credit worth of tuition to pay out of pocket to get to that cap, which, like I said, is around 10 credits. But in that scenario, you're full-time in the A session, but then 3 credits in the B that you report for the VA is a 64% rate of pursuit. So you're using 64% of a day for every 1 day of class. And then you're getting 60% of the online housing rate. So again, you're losing some money there, but that does save you those days. It's just a little bit tougher because for some reason, I don't know why ASU, the online structure is different than the on-campus structure for tuition. It can be done, it's just harder. And the only time that you want to try to stretch benefits is in the fall and the spring. Because whether you're on campus or online, in the summer, you're charged for every credit that you take.
Hmm.
I want to do the stretching in the summer. It really only works in the fall and the spring.
So let me ask this. If you are full-time and not online, or not full, and you're trying to extend your benefits, if I do what you say and do and put in the 9 credits for the VA, how much longer would that extend my benefit?
Very good question. And I was just thinking about this. I don't know why I didn't send maybe this slide up to you guys before. I have one that shows like the breakdown of the math of how many months you'll use, for a full 4-year degree. So typically, if you're doing just 12 credits a semester, you need about 40 months of benefits to finish your degree to get your 120 credits. If you're doing the 9 credits a semester, but you're taking, let's say 15 credits a term, where you're going to need only the 8 semesters to finish up to get to your full 120. So for an academic year in that scenario, for a fall and a spring, if you're not doing summer, instead of using 8 months of benefits for a semester or for a year, you're only using 6. And so for those 4 years, you're only going to use 24 months of benefits if you report just 9 credits every semester and you do just fall and spring. So you're saving 12 months. which would get you a majority of a grad program in that scenario, as long as you're okay with taking that hit on the housing and the financial side of things.
Yeah. So that's really what I was looking at, because for those who are really contemplating doing that master's degree, that's a way that you could pay for at least a year, maybe even more, of a master's degree.
So the other piece of that a lot of people don't think of, because using 36 months is so far down the road.
Yeah.
When you're exhausting your benefits, if you start a class and you have at least 1 day of entitlement remaining when you start that class, the VA is going to pay out through the end of that class when you're using Chapter 30, the Montgomery GI Bill, or your post 9/11 as a veteran. So 12 months, if we look at ASU's structure, fall uses 115 days at most, so just short of 4 months of benefits. Spring uses 118 days at most, so again, just short of 4. So realistically, 12 months, if you're looking at it as a veteran, that can get you a fall, spring, fall, have about 10 days left, right? That's going to get you a 4th C session, because you start a class, it's going to pay all the way out, BAH and tuition. So 12 months could get you actually 4 semesters instead of just 3.
Yeah, I actually wish I would have learned this when I started school, because I didn't know about that until I think around summer of this year. I learned that from Troy, and I actually had switched that. So this fall schedule, I did what he said, and I think I annotated 9 credits when I was filing for the PTVC for my documents. Yeah, I filed for 9 credits, even though I'm taking 15 currently. So it's not too late, yeah.
So Alan, how did that affect your housing? Because I think that's important for people, right? It's
well, yeah, I
funding
mean,
so how did it help?
right. Well, I mean, even though it's 9 credit, it's still considered full time. So I have full benefits in terms of like housing allowance. And the way I just think about it is like intrinsically, I'm saving a couple of months later by marking less credits, not the full 15 credits.
Got it.
And if you want to look, if you want to think of it in terms of financial side of things, yeah, you're losing some housing. So like right now, as an on-campus student at ASU, full-time BAH is $23.82. If you report the 9 credits, it drops you down to 80%. I think it's $1,905. So you're not, you're losing a couple hundred there. But when you look at saving months for a grad program, your grad program is going to be maybe $9,000-$10,000 in tuition. So that $2,000 or $3,000 more in tuition than what you're currently being charged for undergrad. So saving those months, yeah, I'm losing out on the housing, but if it's going to get me into a higher cost program later on, you really are making that money back in tuition being paid for those higher cost programs.
That's a great point.
It is. And we'll bring it up here in a minute. We'll talk about some scholarships that are available, because you can easily make that up with just 1 or 2 scholarships a year. And there's so much available for military dependents, for, that's, we're going to talk about that. But there's a lot of local ones that I didn't even know about. I have both my degrees from ASU, and I didn't know that they were all out there. There's one specific for Marines and Navy, and it's crazy how much is out there. And I think that a lot of people think it's like cumbersome to apply for scholarships, but it's worth it, right?
For sure.
And one of the questions we had was, can I extend my benefits to include a PhD? I think you kind of answered that, but I mean, you'd have to really do a dance to do that, right?
You're gonna have to do a dance to do that. So I mean, that kind of flows into a couple of the questions that we have, for those that are eligible for the Chapter 31, the VRD, the Veterans Readiness and Employment. By trying to work that side of it, of maybe using the VRE and saving your GI Bill for later, it's possible that you can get some of that time still into the PhD, but it's a huge dance, maybe one area to help yourself out, especially if you're just starting out at ASU, where you maybe have some space to transfer in credits. is take classes at a community college in the summer. Because maybe you have the Pell Grant, what's your financial aid package look like? And don't use your GI Bill in the summer if maybe you have a job that, is keeping you up financially. Go to a community college, transfer those credits into ASU as much as you can. So then that way you're saving your months. You're not using it in the summer, but you're still getting classes done. That's always a consideration too, if that's an option for you.
Yeah, I think that's a great option, Troy, mainly because those courses cost a lot less than ASU, right? And so if you can get a scholarship, which we'll kind of jump into Stacy here in a second, if you can get a scholarship to pay for your community college for 2 years and get your associates or whatever, and you can transfer a lot of those in, now you can start your GI Bill 2 years later, essentially.
Exactly.
Now you have 4 years, so 2 years of bachelor's, 2 years of master's, and maybe you can squeeze out that first year PhD if you're really good at it.
Yep.
And here's a secret too, that if you or your parent or somebody that it had to be you or your parent works for either the Maricopa Community College system or the ASU system, you can get your tuition reduced or waived. So that's another, I tell people all the time, if they're frustrated and they feel like they can't do it, that's an avenue. I was talking to a guy yesterday at Phoenix College, and his mom worked there, so he didn't have to pay for any of his associate's degree other than books and fees. So there's lots of different tips and tricks.
Yeah.
Can this be extended for dependents? Can dependents do the same thing for Chapter 35, or is it different?
No, so you don't want to do that on Chapter 35, because if you're reporting less to the VA, since it's not paying towards tuition, you're really just losing money. Then the VA sees you as a 3/4 time student. Now you're trying to use your 75% payment from Chapter 35 to still cover your full tuition if that's what you're relying on to pay your tuition. So when it comes to the Chapter 35 benefit, you don't want to mess with stretching your entitlement, because you're just losing money in that regard.
Are they limited on how long they can go? Do they have so many months like it is for
6 months as well? So I mean, yeah, you're saving months, but again, that's more out of pocket costs that you're going to have to come up with then for your tuition under the 35. Dependents using transferred post 9/11, absolutely. Stretching entitlement still works since it's paying tuition and you're getting that housing allowance.
Well, I know we talked about this earlier in the year, how there's a new policy for VRNE. Can you explain what VRNE is, and then how you can use that instead of your post 9/11?
Yeah, so the VRNE, biggest thing there is it's an employment focused benefit. So it doesn't guarantee that it's going to pay for school, but it's possible that a plan of service can be written under the VRNE that includes paying for an undergrad degree, sometimes a graduate degree. But for VRNE to be eligible, you must be a veteran and have a 10% service connected disability rating or higher with the VA. And then anything other than a dishonorable discharge, and then you're eligible to apply. So if you apply, you go through that process. If Chapter 31 does write a plan of service for you that includes paying for school, one of the changes that has taken place is any months of entitlement used under Chapter 31 will no longer subtract from your GI Bill benefits. So let's say you started this semester using post 9/11, so it used 4 months. You're sitting at 32 months left. You apply for VRNE. They decide, yep, we're going to pick you up and we'll write a plan of service that covers the remainder of your undergrad. We'll get you your bachelor's degree. Then as you're going through school, continuing on, those 32 months of your post 9/11 GI Bill sit there untouched. They're not being used. So then when you finish your plan of service with VRNE, you can say, you know what, I'm going to continue on with school. You guys only did the undergrad, I'm going to keep going. Now you've got 32 months of your post 9/11 to use for your master's program. Then that's where it can kind of sneak maybe into the PhD. So 31 no longer uses or takes away entitlement from your education benefits.
And that was already implemented, that rule?
Yes, so that changed in April of 2021.
So, Troy, what does VR and E stand for? Somebody's asked the question.
Okay, so it used to be called the Vocational Rehabilitation and Employment Program, Chapter 31 under the VA. But the acronym's still the same, the VRE, but now it's called Veterans Readiness and Employment instead of Vocational Rehabilitation and Employment. So if you're familiar with the term Voc Rehab, VRE is Voc Rehab.
So Alan, you just went through the process. How difficult was it? Was it pretty hard to switch over?
So the process itself wasn't that difficult. I think it was just I had to wait a little bit of time to actually meet with my counselor to switch over to the VRE. But after I was able to get in contact with them, it was kind of a smooth process, as I just had to communicate back and forth for maybe, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks. I had to discuss about what my goals are in terms of a career within the IT field, and what are the requirements for me to get into such field. So with work, I talked about how like college certifications specifically within the IT field play a crucial part, and I was approved to switch over to Chapter 31 from 33 for my undergrad program. But it was a smooth process, and I'm still in contacts with my representative frequently, because they like to check up on us. They see how we're doing, see if we need anything. And my counselor has helped me with getting books, getting parking permits, getting even school supplies that maybe Chapter 33 won't provide for you. For like an IT program, you need Windows, because Mac does not sync well with doing like computer taskings. And Chapter 31, I was talking to my counselor, and she was able to get me a Windows laptop. So I was able to do a lot of my programs using a Windows laptop that can do things that a Mac can't. That was a big thing, especially within my program field, was getting that Windows laptop.
Wow.
Well, that's a lot.
Yeah, it is. I remember when I was working at Pat Tillman, I was an SCO, people would come in and I was so shocked. I was like, you're so lucky to get the parking. I mean, the parking itself is worth
the parking is really, yeah. I actually had moved to an apartment to live closer to campus so I could longboard rather than drive. And then I just got parking. So I was like, oh, well, I just moved for no reason.
I think you have to plug in on the VA side though. Those aren't guaranteed parts.
No, yeah, they're not guaranteed. Yeah.
But yes, the parking, a lot of times if you're an on-campus student, it's identified as having to pay that cost may prevent you from being able to continue with your classes, because you maybe have a lot of other things going on. And so that's where the VRE can justify paying for parking, is because without it, you may not be able to get to your classes or continue with your classes. And as Alan said, same thing with the laptop. You need one to be successful. So even though it's not required of all students, having one keeps you on level footing and allows you to finish your classes. So that's where the VRE, we can justify maybe purchasing that or reimbursing for it, because it's going to be something that is going to allow you to finish school. So
Yeah.
Not guaranteed, but it's there to discuss.
We have another question. Does VRE pay any tuition cost? I'm sorry, any BAH cost?
So the answer is yes and no. So it depends on what other benefits you have available. So it's for Chapter 31, if that's the only benefit that you're eligible for. So maybe you were a reservist and didn't get enough qualifying active duty time for post 9/11, or you've exhausted all 36 months, or it's expired, So VRE is your only benefit available. There is a VRE monthly rate. So we call it the subsistence allowance under Chapter 31, but it is essentially the same as a monthly housing allowance. But the Chapter 31 rate, I believe, is $775, or right around there, for a single veteran. But then if you have dependents, it increases from there. And you need, I don't know, about 10 to 12 dependents, I think, to get anywhere near the on-campus BAH rate. So don't know if we can get that going, but so 31 itself has the subsistence slots. But if you have at least 1 day of entitlement remaining under your post 9/11 GI Bill, And for some of you that maybe got out before 2013, so you have that 15-year eligibility window still for your post 9/11. As long as you have at least 1 day of entitlement remaining and you're still within your eligibility period, if you have it, you can elect to be paid at the post 9/11 housing rate while using VR&E for everything else. So that's why I was saying yes and no. VR&E has its own rate, but if you're also still eligible for post 9/11, then yes, you get that monthly BAH rate.
Wow.
Match that payment, which is, I think, Alan, you've got that going right now, aren't you?
Yeah.
Right?
My fellow classmates and who are also using Chapter 33, we're about pretty much getting the same pay, even though I'm 31 and they're 33.
So you'll still be able to, you have some remaining. So if you were going to do your post degree or like your grad, you'd be able to go back and use your Chapter 33 or.
Correct.
Does that
Yeah,
work?
I started my Chapter 33 benefits spring this year. So I only used spring and summer for Chapter 33, and then I transitioned to 31. So I'm planning on using 31 for the rest of my undergrad, and probably look into the 4-to-1 IT program for the master's, and I can hopefully switch to the 33 if needed.
That's very cool. So is it for the VR&E? We talked about, it wasn't that difficult, it's mainly just trying to get a hold of them and everything. Do you have to prove, I mean, I know that you have to jump through a little bit of hoops to show what your degree program is and all that stuff. Is it difficult to get approved to get in the program at all? Like if you're,
Well, it is on my side of the end where I had to communicate with the counselor. Like I had to pretty much explain why I would need schooling, because like I think Troy said earlier, it's not meant for schooling, it's meant for you to get back into the work field. And so if that is your goal, like you have to talk to your counselor, and then you guys start to plan together on what your goals revolve around. And if your goals revolve around school, then you guys can come to like an agreement that this might be a requirement in order for you to get to your hands into that field, whatever it may be. Even if it's like I believe like a trade school, like if you wanted to be a welder, like I was a welder in the Navy. If you want to be a welder, and going to trade school might benefit you into getting a position in that field, then they can probably do the same thing, I'm sure, for that.
Yeah. I think
I just have a quick question based on that. So you're in your bachelor's degree, right, Alan?
Correct.
And so could you use VR&E for a master's degree? Are you eligible to use that for that?
Well, once I get to that, I think towards the end of your junior year, you're supposed to apply for it. Once I get to that end, I was going to talk to my academic advisors to understand more of the specifics for that process. I don't know if Troy has an answer for that.
It's possible. It's just what ends up coming up with the VR&E is they're going to help you through whatever level of degree program that gets you started in the field. So VR&E doesn't use the term entry level anymore. We've kind of gotten away from that, but it is really what's going to allow you to work in that field. And so if an undergrad degree is what's going to get you started, then that may be where they limit that. But some counselors, when they're writing a plan of service, if there's a possibility where grad school maybe is going to be the better fit, some counselors write a plan of service where it leaves it open-ended, where we say, okay, we're going to pay for at least through your bachelor's. And then towards the end of your bachelor's, we'll maybe revisit, see how you're doing with your grades. Is there the possibility of a 4+1? Does it make sense at that point in time where maybe a grad program is going to make it more employable? We can look at that and possibly redevelop the plan of service to then include a grad program. But where that can then fall under is how many months you've used, because Chapter 31, isn't going to write a plan of service that can't be finished in the months that you have. Where like post 9/11, we talked about, you exhaust, they'll pay out through the end of any class that started, even though you've got 2 or 3 semesters left, then it's just out of pocket. VR&E is not going to write a plan that's going to cut you off in the middle of a grad program. They're going to make sure you have enough months. So It can be used for grad school. It just depends on the field you're going into, maybe depends on your service-connected disabilities, where a lower level position might aggravate your service-connected disabilities. But if we get you a grad program and a grad degree that allows you to maybe be in the same field but less physical or a less stressful environment in the same area, that's more compatible with your service-connected disabilities, maybe 31 will support that higher degree. There's, each case is a little bit different, so there's a lot of vagueness, a lot of, well, maybe.
Yes, it's unique to each veteran, really. Yeah. Okay, we have another question. Can you discuss the retroactive induction benefit under VR&E? I've never heard of that.
Well, that's one, Alan, I was gonna ask if you were gonna check with your counselor on that one. They should have talked to you.
I've never heard of that up until this question.
Yeah. So the retroactive induction, that was part of the change in April of 2021, where VA said use of your 31 no longer takes away from your education benefit. So the retroactive induction is the potential to have months of your chapter 33 restored to you. And so
Okay.
Yeah. So what happens is when you apply for chapter 31, if they find you entitled, and if they decide they're going to write a plan of service that includes school, and you've already been going to school using your post 9/11 GI Bill, counselors should talk to you about the retroactive induction. And what they're looking at is, with the semesters that you've already completed, could it have been possible for you to be using chapter 31 at the time? So the first part they look at is, when did you get your disability rating? So let's say you started school in 2020, but you didn't get your disability rating until 2022. So me as a counselor, I'm going to go, okay, well, you were using your post 9/11, but you were first got your rating in 2022, so you would have been you could have been eligible for 31 at that time. That's maybe as far back as I can go, even though you were in school before that. The second piece we look at is, were those semesters and those classes that you completed in line with the plan of service that VR&E is writing for you? So is it the same degree program, or are we doing something completely different? So if it's in line with the degree program that chapter 31 VR&E is going to support, then it's possible where we could say, you know what, we're going to go back in the system and treat it as if you were under chapter 31 at the time back in 2022. And then for each semester from that point forward until now, we're going to give you those months back under your post 9/11 GI Bill and treat it as if you were under 31 at the time. Now, there's a lot of other stuff that goes into that to figure out whether or not that makes sense to do. Were you on yellow ribbon? Did you have a lot of out-of-pocket costs? You know, there's a number of things that you talk to your counselor about to really make sure retroactive induction fits for you and actually is your best option. But it is possible to have post 9/11 months restored because we're treating it as if you were under chapter 31 at the time.
Now, for us, would it be too late to? I've heard about this. I just didn't hear it under the term retroactive induction. I've always heard, vets saying the term replenish or restore. But would it be too late for me to talk to my counselor about it? Because I mentioned it earlier, I use it for the beginning of the year. But if I fulfill those requirements that you stated, is it too late?
It shouldn't be. If they didn't officially offer it for you before you declined it, they should still be able to look at it.
Okay, something for me to bring up to my counselor. Okay.
Wow. It's very interesting how much is available to veterans. It's astounding, really.
Yeah.
All right,
So
go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
It's a weird one. It can happen. Like I said, there's a lot of more ins and outs to it. That's a very general piece. But that's a reason, between your VR&E not taking away from your GI Bill and potentially getting some months back, it makes sense to, if you have a disability rating, apply for VR&E to see what they will do. Even if more than likely they're gonna say no. Depending on your situation, it's worth it to apply and see.
You're a great straight man, Troy. The next question is, does it matter what your disability rating is for, or just anything over 10%?
So again, yes and no. You know, I can use the example of sleep apnea, where that gives a 50% rating right away. In most cases of sleep apnea, there's really not a lot of impairments to work activities or limitations to work in general with sleep apnea. In some, you know, severe cases, there might be. So somebody that maybe has just sleep apnea and is at 50%, maybe told that they're not entitled because their service-connected disability doesn't create impairments or limitations to work activities. Whereas somebody with a 20% rating, that's maybe for their knees, that limits them from bending, stooping, walking, using stairs, where it creates those limitations to being in construction or whatever physical job field may be out there. It's not anything specific, but it limits them in general terms. That person may be found entitled because those service-connected conditions do create or contribute to impairments and limitations towards work. So the level of rating or how high your rating is doesn't always matter. It is more so what conditions, what you're rated for, how that limits you is what they're really looking at.
Yeah, so it's really about not being able to work in certain ways. And for the VRE to now find you a new field that you can actually work in.
Right.
Okay. Well, now the questions are starting to stack up. So let's see how I can get through them. All right. Are there any benefits for those of us who paid into the MGIB under post 9/11?
Montgomery GI Bill? Is that?
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't have
he
any.
actually, yeah, he changed that a little bit and said, do those of us who paid into the Montgomery GI Bill kicker get any further benefits under post 9/11?
There you go.
Right. So if you paid the extra, so it's not necessarily the kicker. The VA uses the term the buy-up for that. So if you paid an extra $600 on top of the $1,200, you know, that you originally paid in, or an extra $900, I think were the two options. Unfortunately, when you switch to the post 9/11, the buy-up goes away. That money's just gone. If you had the true kicker, so like your enlistment bonus, the Army College Fund, the Navy College Fund is the term that you hear a lot for the kicker. The kicker where it's the DoD wants to give you money, extra money. So not that you paid extra. The kicker should carry over and increase your monthly housing payment. But unfortunately, the buy-up, that money's gone. You don't get that back, and it doesn't increase the $33.
All right. The next question is, if you exhaust your Chapter 33 benefits, 0 days left, but then get service connected later, would a veteran be eligible for VRE?
Yes. So on paper, a veteran has a total of 48 months of entitlement to use between a combination of 2 or more benefits. And so if you exhausted your 36 months under post 9/11, you still technically have 12 months remaining for just VRE. Now, with that being said, already kind of went through the rule change where VRE doesn't take away from your GI Bill, but GI Bill usage does take away from VRE months. In those scenarios, let's say you used your 36 months, got a degree, you started to work. You said it's a couple years later, maybe your service-connected conditions are getting worse and you can't be in that job field anymore. So you apply to VRE. If they find you entitled, you only have 12 months. But let's say they figure out that you need 24 months to finish up a plan of service. It's possible they could recoup months of entitlement. So they don't have to, but it's possible they could pull back 12 months that you used under your GI Bill. Because again, let's say that training and education, you can't work in that field anymore. So then those months used are no longer applicable to what VRE wants to do. So we could say, you know what, we're gonna pull back 12 months, give you 24 months under VRE to finish out that plan. Think of it as level 2 within VRE, where if we can find what we call a serious employment handicap, that allows us to get an extension on months of entitlement if necessary, past 48 months. So then you used your 36. Maybe we can't recoup those months, but you have a serious employment handicap. We can get an extension. So it's a different way of finding more months. So, yes.
Okay, well, really quickly, I'll just run through the military scholarships that's available. I just found out about a few of these this week, so I was a little excited about it to share. We have quite a bit local, and so if you're online, I encourage you to look in your community locally, just to look and see what's available from all the different veteran service organizations. Maybe reach out to the VFW, American Legion, those kind of places. One of the ones here locally that you can apply for, there's a few. Southwest Veteran Chamber of Commerce has one. Arizona Veterans Hall of Fame Society Scholarship Program is available. Also, the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation for Marine and Navy children. So if you're a dependent, and your parent was in the Marines or in the Navy, you can apply for that one. And that's it looks like it's pretty simple. You just need to be a child or stepchild. They had to have served honorably, or I think it's active duty as well, active duty reserve or veteran. And then minimum 2.0 GPA. And then you have to just demonstrate a financial need. And then I think, Juan, did you just say there was one more that locally?
Yeah, I think the VMLC, the Veterans Leadership Medical Center, has scholarships, and the Arizona Hall of Fame Society grant scholarships. They usually do it during their big luncheons. They offer those scholarships.
So I will put the links to those in the chat, and if you can also reach out to us anytime at OVMAE, and we can connect you to those. We know quite a few people that work that system, and it's and there's also the Pat Tillman Veteran Scholarship as well, or I think it's Troy. Do you know about that one? That you have to go through kind of like it's like a whole process, right, to get kind of chosen for that one.
The foundation one is pretty extensive. The catch there is, even though it's for every grade degree level, they do focus a lot on graduate degrees. So it's tough to get the Pat Tillman Foundation scholarship as an undergrad. Very competitive.
And Dana said in the chat, MOAA does as well.
The Officers Association.
Oh,
yes. Yeah. Military Officers Association.
Well, I'll be applying to all of these.
You should, Alan.
There is nothing that limits, like, I never have understood why, I see people that I've asked them before, they're getting their GI Bill, they're going along, and I'm like, so did you fill out a FAFSA? They're like, no. I'm like, fill out a FAFSA. You could get a Pell Grant. There's so many grants out there. There's just tons of money that just gets, ignored, really. So fill everything out. Try to get as much as you can, because then, like, you could look at these other options to where you could maybe not, put in for so many hours. You can stretch your benefits. There's some people that don't necessarily get 100%, right? They don't get their 100% of the GI Bill because they didn't, get as many hours in. I know I didn't have a GI Bill, so I ended up doing a lot of loans, grants, scholarships. I owe quite a bit now, so I'm in repayment. So that was one thing that I was going to talk about is one option that you can do. And I didn't know about this at all until I was finishing up my grad degree. I was looking at a lot of loans and I was getting overwhelmed and starting to panic. And so a financial advisor told me to apply for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. And I'm telling you, it has alleviated so much stress for me. There's some stipulations. There's not like you have to work for either nonprofit or local city, local government or federal government. And you can also, I think you can also work in like a hospital setting. There's a big list of things that you can work under. You have to work full time and you have to make 120 payments. So for 10 years, you have to make a payment. But like during the pandemic, they kind of put a hold on everything. So for that 3 years that was held up, I didn't make any payments, but it shows that I've been, it shows that I was making payments that whole time, which was kind of nice. Not everything is eligible. So, direct subsidized loans and direct unsubsidized loans, those are hard to say. So there's a lot of those are covered, but then like the Perkins loan isn't, student loans from private lenders, so those are ineligible. And then there's a lot of repayment plans. So they have, it's pretty much pay as you earn is really what it is. So, the least you make, the lower your payments are, the more you make, but they also have, I'll put the link for that so you can look up the program in the chat. And
Stacy,
yeah.
for the chat, is that going to everybody? Because
Oh, let me hear. It's probably just going to the host and panelists. Thanks for pointing that out. I can change it right now.
Okay. I was gonna say we want to make sure everybody can see it.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
And then Stacy, so you made essentially 120 payments, and then they forgave the student loan, and you don't owe anything anymore.
Well, I am only 4 years in, so I've only made
Okay.
48 payments. So I still have another 6 years to go. And so the thing that's really lucky about it, like I said, I didn't make payments for 3 years, but it showed that I did because of the thing that was going on during the pandemic. And then my payments were really low because it was going off of what I made. And I started out working at a elementary school. I was making like 20-something thousand a year. So my payments were really low. And then I started working for a nonprofit and I was making still only like 40,000 a year. So my payments have been really low. I've been lucky. They've been under $100. I know people that, their payments are $600-700. But every year you have to, you have to maintain it. You have to put your paperwork in. You can't just kind of let it go. A lot of people would just ignore it. And then at 10 years, they'd be like, oh, I paid all this. And then they would get turned down because they didn't have proof. You have to prove where you've been working. Like I had to turn in all my employers have had to sign that I work there. So there's a little bit of work involved, not a lot. It doesn't, and it's gotten really a lot easier. In the last year or so, Biden's done a lot to try to make it, the administration's made it a ton. Like used to, you'd have to print out this long form, you'd have to take it and go get it signed, you'd have to scan it in. Now it's all electronic. You can get it electronically sent to your HR department. They can sign it and then it's in the file. They also have the new program, the SAVE program, which is the Saving on a Valuable Education, which I applied for that. And you can have your payments as low as $0. So like, and they've changed with the SAVE plan. It used to be the income exemption used to be 150% of the poverty line, but now it's 225%. So now you, like, if you have a family of 4, like I have a family of 4, I have 2 children. So you can make more, like you can, I think for a family of 4, you can make up to like, I don't know, 65,000 a year or whatever and pay $0. So it just depends on, so you end up paying a whole lot less. So when I applied for the SAVE program and I got approved, it estimated in the 10 years that I'll do it, if I don't make any more money than I am right now, that I would end up paying back $600 of my over $100,000 loans. So
over the next 6 years.
Over the next 6 years.
Yeah.
If I don't, if I make more money, of course, then, but if you're making more money, you can pay more. But so just put it out there. I know that some people do. Student loans are pretty alluring. It feels like free money when you're doing it. And I did that for 9 years that I was in school. So I didn't, I was in my 30s, so I can't say that I was young and stupid. I knew better. But sometimes you need to do that so you get your education. But just to let everybody know, there are things out there, if you do have a lot of student loans, look into the different programs that are out there, apply, just put in for it. And, and my other big advice is to try to get as many grants and scholarships as you can. So is there any questions? Where are we at on this?
Yeah, we got about 10 more minutes left. Are there any questions out there?
No. I know I talked really fast, so if
Yeah.
anybody.
So I got a couple questions. So Alan, your degree is in information technology,
Yes.
and you believe you'll be able to be finished within the 4-year period approximately?
Well, projected would be fall 2025, as I started in spring and been taking summer classes as well. But
Okay.
2025 is projected, not including the 4-1 master's program that I might do. And if that's the case, then I project like 2026 maybe with that.
So because you're in this field, I know that there's a lot of certificate kinds of things that may come up for
Mhm.
you. Will the VRNE or Title 33, will either one of those cover the certificates that might be required for continuing on in that work?
I'm gonna tell you right now, I hope so. It's something I'm gonna be talking with my counselor upon graduating, because I've already told her that college is one aspect, but within the IT field, certifications are a big deal. So that's something I'm gonna try to bring up about certifications and hope for the best. But I'm sure it's gonna be a conversation that I need to have with the counselor because I don't know for sure, you know.
Well,
It's
one thing that I wanted to bring up, because we had lunch with a group this week called AZ Next. They're from the WP Carey. And they have a certificate program that's actually, they got a big, huge grant for, and there's a ton of certificate programs that are absolutely free for veterans. And a big chunk of those is IT and cybersecurity. So you can get, I put a link in the chat for it's called AZ Next, and everybody should look into it because it's not just IT and cybersecurity. It's manufacturing, they have business, they have a lot of different things that are absolutely free, and you don't even have to be at ASU. So you can get these certificates even if you're just, like just getting out of service, you haven't gone to school at all, you can do these for free. But there is a lot of really good certificate programs, and they're taught by ASU professors. And most of the ASU professors that teach it are also veterans. And so it's a
Yes.
really cool community. But I highly suggest anybody look into that because, like I said, you don't have to be going to ASU to get those certificates because they're trying to get people into the manufacturing and cybersecurity world. So that's where that is.
Yes. We have a couple more questions. I heard of a program for 100% P&T, being able to apply for full loan forgiveness. Any info on that?
Assuming a PNT is permanent and total, 100% disability. Okay.
So there is the option for that. You'd have to go through the Department of Education. I don't recall all the requirements or the documentation that they need. But yeah, your VA rating, if you're permanent and total, you can turn that in and have the loan forgiveness. The issue that comes up though is it's going to prevent you from getting any future student loans. So if you're trying to go back and get more loans, go back into school after you've already had those discharged, you essentially have to tell the Department of Education then that you're no longer considered permanent and totally disabled. So there's kind of that catch-22 if you're wanting to fill that out.
So the advice is to wait till after your degree's done.
Yeah.
And I think I think it covers your spouse as well. I think it covers your spouse and your dependent children. That's what chapter 35 is essentially, right? I know it's for people that are dependents.
The loan discharge though falls under that. So it's different because again, it's Department of Education. So even somebody that's not a veteran, if they have their own medical documentation that lists them as being permanent and totally disabled from a doctor, they can have their student loans forgiven. It's just veteran side of things, you have that documentation a little bit easier based on your rating, and it's easier to turn in. I don't know if it covers spouse stuff. It's different than the 35.
So we have one more question. Can someone explain the yellow ribbon grant?
Yes, I can.
Awesome.
So yellow ribbon is tied directly to your chapter 33, your post 9/11 GI Bill eligibility. Or if you're a dependent using transferred benefits or a dependent using the Fry Scholarship. For an active duty member that died while active duty member that died while in service. So yellow ribbon The post 9/11 GI Bill has to be at the 100% tier for your eligibility. So either you as the veteran had over 36 months of active duty, or you as a dependent are using transfer benefits that are at the 100% tier. So yellow ribbon is not a guarantee. The school chooses whether or not they want to participate in yellow ribbon. And then the school tells the VA, here's how many spots we have available or how much money we want to have available. Here's how we're going to run it. And the VA just says, cool, we'll follow what you say since you're choosing to participate. And then the yellow ribbon, it depends on the type of school. So at a state school, the post 9/11 covers 100% of the reported in-state tuition and fees. There's no tuition cap. So at a state school like ASU, U of A, NAU, yellow ribbon is there for any out-of-state tuition and fees that a student might have if they're a non-resident. If it's a private, for-profit, or foreign school, there's a tuition cap for the academic year on how much post 9/11 would cover. And yellow ribbon at those schools is for anything above that tuition cap. And so here at ASU, it's for out-of-state tuition and fees. So if you're an out-of-state student and you have that charge, if you're granted yellow ribbon, the VA pays half of the out-of-state tuition, the school pays the other half. And that's your yellow ribbon. The catch is the VA is not going to pay more in yellow ribbon charges than what they've already paid towards in-state tuition and fees. And then so here at ASU, we have two different sides of yellow ribbon. So not all schools do it this way, but at least at ASU, for our on-campus degree-seeking students, we have 90 spots available for undergrad, 3 spots available for graduate students. So as an on-campus degree-seeking student, you have to apply for a yellow ribbon position. And then it's first come, first served. For our online students, because ASU didn't always have out-of-state tuition for online, that changed about 5 years ago when we changed our tuition structure. We didn't want to penalize students that were using VA benefits because now all of a sudden out-of-state tuition magically appeared. So for our online students, we have an unlimited number of yellow ribbon spots. So if you're an online degree seeking student, you're eligible for yellow ribbon, you're out of state, it's automatically applied for you.
So that makes sense now about any veteran, no matter where they are, almost has the same benefits from ASU.
Yes, because it used to be in-state and out-of-state was charged the same, so everything was viewed as in-state for our online students under VA purposes. But
I do want to point out, because I used to, when I was an SCO, it used to always kind of make me sad to see the students who were immersion, and they would come in and they would have that. It's a big difference, like a lot to pay, and they would come in and they wouldn't get their, residency. And it was like, please apply to get your residency. You don't understand. It's like $10,000 more per semester. So, it's a lot. And they, for whatever reason, sometimes they don't get approved for residency, right? Is there reasons they don't? I mean, I think it's very few.
I mean, the Choice Act now, that's why we have so few spots for on-campus students, because the Choice Act for dependents, showing your intent to become a resident is a lot easier when you're using a VA education benefit to qualify now for in-state tuition, so we don't have to have as many yellow ribbon spots. But for the online, you don't have that option to do the intent. So,
right.
Yeah, and then just for the online students, you may or may not see yellow ribbon, because I see the comment here that you were wondering why it was applied to your account. If you remember back to the beginning when I was talking about tuition for in-state students, it's capped at 9 credits or 10 credits as an online student. If you're only taking 1 class a session, you're at 6 credits, you're not going to see yellow ribbon because all of that's considered in-state tuition and fees. So the only time really as an online student you're going to see yellow ribbon is applied to your B session, because that's where you're going to get above 10, 12, 15 credits, where then you're starting to incur the out-of-state charges at that point. So that's why it always shows up towards the end of the semester for online students.
Great. Well, we're at the end of our time. I thank those 5 people out there who stick with us. And I really thank our panelists, Troy, Alan, and Stacy, for giving us some really great information. We recorded this so that we can send it out for the use for others at a later time, which I think this was very useful. I learned a lot, actually. And so thank you, all 3 of you, for really being great panelists, asking good questions and giving us good information.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah,
guys have
thank you. I actually learned a lot too. Thanks, Troy. Stacey.
Yeah, and hopefully, for as long as this recording stays out, that the VA doesn't change things too much to where the information is still valid in a year or 2.
Yeah.
No,
They're gonna
we
run in
know
and
it's
be like,
hopefully-
but I heard.
Yes.
Exactly.
Hopefully it'll be good at least for the next 6 months, right?
There you go. That's what we're hoping.
Great. Well, thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Y'all have a great evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.